There are few places that seem as if time forgot. They are wild, like before man changed the concept of wilderness forever. In a country as populated as India, you would never imagine that such a place could still exist, let alone two of them. But in the remote state of Gujarat, that is exactly what has happened. Two sanctuaries protecting two endangered creatures invites the animal lover for a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But that is not all. This is a land rich in human culture. Artisans flourish in the arid landscape, creating art forms that exist nowhere else. So join us today as we explore the wildlife and human spirit that is Gujarat, land of extremes.
Namaste, I'm Bill Ball, and I'm going to be your guide on this episode of Journeys in India. And this is India!
Gujarat is in the far western corner of India. Within the large state of Gujarat, we are focusing on two national parks and the unique people that flourish in and around those reserves. The Little Rann of Kutch is a large area that includes a wildlife sanctuary and a diverse people whose culture is firmly rooted in art. But first, we will visit a national park dedicated to preserving an antelope species that is more common in the state of Texas than it is in the wilds of India where it is from, the blackbuck. The blackbuck, listed by CITES as vulnerable, is one of the most beautiful antelope in the world. The male's horns are a prize for hunters. That's how the blackbuck got to Texas, for hunting and sportsman resorts. Escapees have helped populate the open country in Texas with numbers that far exceed the 50,000 left in India. Blackbucks are endemic or originally found only on the Indian subcontinent. Males are black on top with white underbellies, while the females and young are brown. The male's exquisite spiral horns are showpieces after the third year. Females do not have horns. In all my travels through India, I have only seen blackbuck once before. The best place to see and photograph them is at Velavadar National Park. Velavadar is located in the middle of the grasslands of Gujarat. Established in 1976 to preserve the blackbuck, it is also home to nilgiri and wolves. The park is not large, only 13 square miles. It is divided into the northern section where the grasslands predominate and blackbucks are found. And the southern section, scrublands, is where birding is best. The two sections are split by the highway. Blackbuck are social antelope with a dominant male forming and guarding his harem. Other males form bachelor herds where they practice fighting to ready themselves for a challenge to the harem holders. The long pointed horns are the chief weapons in this ritual, where death of the weaker may be one of the outcomes. The park's roads are dirt but well maintained. Sedan cars can easily navigate the roads during the dry season, which runs from March to June. During the monsoons, large parts of the park flood, causing many areas to be impassable. Blackbucks aren't the only antelope species found in the park. Nilgiri or blue bull are found here as well. These are widespread antelope and are not in danger. The biggest antelope in India, nilgiri can reach a height of 5 feet at the shoulder, towering over the blackbucks, which don't quite reach 3 feet. Weight is even more disparate, with nilgiri topping the scales at over 500 pounds, while blackbucks are lucky if they hit 80. There is also a wide variety of birds in the park, especially in the southern half. Because the park abuts the bay, there are large numbers and variety of aquatic birds like ibis, heron, stork, egrets, plover, and flamingo. Many rare and threatened bird species winter here from as far away as Europe and Siberia. The main predator for the blackbuck is the wolf. The Indian wolf is a subspecies of the timber or gray wolf found in Alaska and Yellowstone. Wolves are one of the widest spread mammals on Earth, found across the whole northern hemisphere. We didn't film a wolf within the park. They are very rare and elusive. But while checking in with the rangers, one chased a blackbuck right past our vehicle. Just outside the park, we did get a brief shot of one. Other than the one that ran past our vehicle, this is the only one I have ever seen in India. Wolves were more common and played a major role in Kipling's Jungle Book as the adoptive parents of Mowgli, the boy and main character. When blackbucks sense danger or to escape attack, they jump like a spring, which is called pronging. Otherwise, they rely on their incredible speed and can reach 50 miles per hour. Blackbuck are beautiful antelope, and I could spend hours watching them interact. But there is another rare hoofed animal found exclusively in Gujarat that is high on my bucket list. And so we head to the western edge of Gujarat for an opportunity to see one of the last wild members of the horse family found in Asia. A very small section of Gujarat, the Rann of Kutch, is the home of the Indian wild ass or onager. This is a distinct subspecies of the Asiatic wild ass, which is found from Syria and Iran through Pakistan and India to Central Asia. Classified as endangered, this equine is facing shrinking habitat, competition for domestic livestock, and poaching. The Indian subspecies, one of 5, is limited to a small area on the extreme western edge of India, known as the Little Rann of Kutch. The Little Rann of Kutch is located in the Thar Desert. It is seasonally marshy and is the only large flooded grasslands in Asia. The marsh covers about 10,000 square miles. Surrounded by the Gulf of Kutch and the Thar Desert, this area has developed a mix of ecozones ranging from mangroves to grasslands, deserts, and of course the salt marshes from which the area derives its name. Rann is the Hindi word for salt marsh. The Indian wild ass or onager size is somewhere between a domestic donkey and a horse. Roughly 50 inches high at the shoulders, the 700-pound equine are not to be trivialized. They are strong and protective of their colts. They can inflict deadly blows on predators with their hooves. A swift animal, the onager can gallop at an average of 20 plus miles per hour and can hit speeds of 30 miles per hour. Unlike most other members of the horse family, they are not easily domesticated. Over the thousands of years man and wild ass have coexisted, there are only a few claims of having tamed one, and those accounts are over 4,000 years old. That is not to say that there is no relationship between man and that beast. These wild donkeys have been known to raid farmers' crops, especially wheat and millet. Onagers form a small harem presided over by a single stallion. The group stays together until the female is ready to foal. During this time, the females and young stay away from the stallion. All members of the horse family are odd-toed. In fact, their feet have developed so they put their entire weight on their central toe. This gives them a springy gait and extraordinary speed. Odd-toed animals, of which there are 18 species, are divided between the equines, and the rest are tapirs and rhinos. Ironically, most of these highly social large herbivores are either endangered or their numbers have been dropping at alarming rates. Some, like the rhinos, are nearing critical levels as poaching continues. The first horses originated in North America about 5 million years ago, migrating to Europe roughly 3.2 million years later. In a weird twist of fate, horses spread throughout the Old World while they disappeared from their continent of origin, North America. Closely related to both domestic horses and donkeys, the wild onager has differentiating traits. Both onagers and donkeys have an erect mane of short hair as opposed to the horse's flowing mane. Donkeys have horizontal stripes on the shoulders, but wild asses are plain colored. Even the onager's ears are a bit different, being that they are bigger than a donkey's, but smaller than a horse's. The onager is not the only animal protected in this reserve. There are wolves, hyena, jackal, and several rare species of birds, along with the nilgiri. Like in Velavadar, the nilgiri have adapted to the changing environment of the rann and have successfully carved out a niche for themselves. They mix well with the onager and with the protection the reserve affords, have flourished. Having had an exceptional day of wildlife viewing in the Wild Ass Sanctuary, I had a desire to check out the local village and a very special art form it has become famous for: block art. Block art on the surface sounds quite easy. You take a carved wooden block in a selected pattern and dip it in the dye and press it on the cloth, leaving the imprint. It's not quite that simple. This is both a manual dexterity challenge and an art in the truest sense of the word. We had an opportunity to visit a gentleman that has made his living doing block art for many decades. To watch his precision and speed is mind-blowing. The slightest misalignment would ruin the tablecloth, scarf, or dress he was working on. There is literally no room for mistakes. He carefully lines up the pattern, taps the block to release just the right amount of dye, and then repeats the process all the way across the cloth. You have been watching him in slow motion, so you can catch the nuances of the technique. Here it is at regular speed. The variety of patterns and the angle and combinations that are applied make this an art form. Many of the block artists also carve their own blocks, making this even more awe-inspiring. Block art can only be fully appreciated in its final ready-for-market form. The colors, layout, and aesthetic appeal all fold into each other to make a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. With a block art wall hanging in my hand, I was ready to head back to the Wild Ass Sanctuary. But this time, it was not the onager we would be after. Don't get me wrong, we would take photos if one was found, but we are going to a corridor of the park where few onagers have or will go. The guide takes us down the river in a seldom visited area of the park. I had read that the common cranes use the Wild Ass Sanctuary as a rest stop and a refueling station, but I was not prepared for what I saw. Few things really awe me, having traveled and seen so much. This was one of those wow moments that words and pictures just don't do justice to. Let me back up a little. I love cranes and have since I was young. They are tall birds with a regal appearance and a splash of red and white on their heads. One of the 15 species of crane, the common or Eurasian crane, is one of only 4 species that are not threatened with extinction. The others being our own sandhill, the demoiselle, and the brogerla cranes. Medium in height for a crane at 52 inches, the common is one of the widest in its distribution, breeding in small numbers throughout Central Europe. The most prolific breeding takes place in Sweden, Finland, and Russia. Of the 500,000 common cranes left in the world, over 100,000 are breeding in Russia. During the winter, they migrate to northern Africa, China, and of course India. It is here in Gujarat, and specifically the Wild Ass Sanctuary, that an amazing number are seen. I just have never been this lucky, and yet, as the day wears on, the bird count is only growing. Cranes are everywhere, and I can't get enough. These are hardy birds living in harsh conditions at the boreal forests in the far north. So like all crane species, they cannot be fussy eaters. Omnivores, they eat mostly plant materials like roots, fruit, and seeds. But during the summer breeding season, they switch up to animals, including insects, amphibians, rodents, and even small birds. As far as predators go, the common crane has few. They are an aggressive bird and will defend against eagle and mammal attacks by stabbing with their bill and kicking. They use short hops and what I call repositioning flights, short flights away from potential threats, to avoid danger as well. Having read about these incredible migratory flocks of common crane, I was thrilled to have seen it firsthand, especially since I had not expected it. Seeing so many birds, I felt like I had found a good portion of the 500,000 worldwide population. For me, the best part of travel is the unexpected. And today, I had the surprise of a lifetime. And luckily, it was one of the good kind. Still bubbling over with excitement, our local guide reminded me that we had an appointment to see one of the most famous and awarded artists in India, Katari Sumar Dad. Like the block artist, this artisan specializes in an art form only this region of Gujarat is famous for. In fact, this type of work can only be found here. It is called Rogan. Simply put, Rogan is placing a series of paint dots on cloth to form beautiful and quite intricate patterns. Sort of an abstract pointillism for textiles. Because the art form started as a way of decorating clothing, they had to perfect the technique not just for wall hangings, which they are now famous for, but as a washable and wearable expression of their craft. Once more widespread, Rogan is now practiced by just 6 families in this one village. Sumar is actually in the process of preparing pieces for a one-man show in Mumbai. In India, this is highly collectible. I watched as the artist began preparing the colors that he would use for the piece.
So they're all mixed with the castor oil and
Yeah.
Once the colors are ready, the artisan dabs and dots and drags the gel-like substance across the fabric. It sounds simple, but it is anything but. One out-of-place touch and it would ruin the work. Even more incredible is the vision that creates these masterpieces. Once finished, they are dried in the sun for one day and they become washable. Jody, the camera-shy producer, and I had to have our own pieces. Bringing home a little part of your trip has been a part of travel from before the time of Marco Polo. So who am I to break that distinguished tradition? With a day so jam-packed with wildlife and culture, a good place to relax, have a delicious meal, and ultimately sleep is a necessity. For us, that place is Rann Riders Hotel. There are not a lot of Western-level accommodations in the Rann. Tourism is in its infancy here, so do your research and book early. For us, the choice was simple. The Riders is a Western standard hotel in an out-of-the-way destination. The rooms were nice and the bathrooms had all the amenities you could want. Add to that a friendly staff and what more could you ask for? The restaurant serves both local Gujarati fare with some continental choices. Probably the main concern for would-be Indian travelers is the food. Granted, in India you will see mostly Indian cuisine, but most of the upscale hotels and resorts will either have a Western restaurant, usually Italian, and maybe a Chinese one as well. If they have only one restaurant, like here, they will have some continental options. The hotel staff had a great surprise for us at dinner time: Gujarati dancers. Every region of India has its own music and dance. Watching the moves and absorbing the music is one of the most interesting and fun aspects of travel. In fact, it was so contagious that our camera-shy producer, Jody, joined in. Now, to be honest, she told the cameraman to quit shooting. I guess he didn't hear her. It was up early in the next day to head back into the park. We were going to the far side of the preserve, so we will be changing hotels. Our guide has a surprise for us that he claims will blow me away. I can't imagine what it could be. We already got up close to the wild asses, and we saw the migratory flocks of common cranes. What could possibly outdo those? The answer was an even larger, more impressive flock of cranes, this time the demoiselle cranes. It is hard to imagine the preserve can support the numbers of this species of crane, let alone the common cranes we watched yesterday. Demoiselle cranes are a bit smaller, about 30 inches tall with a 5.5-foot wingspan. They summer in Central Europe and Asia, but they winter in India. They have one of the most arduous migrations, having to fly over the Himalayan mountains at altitudes up to 26,000 feet. They could take paths through lower elevations, but the route seems hardwired in them. So unfortunately, many don't make it. That does not seem to be a problem now. There are so many, I can't count them. They are beautiful, graceful birds, so it is no wonder they play a significant role in northern Indian literature and poetry. Beautiful women are compared to this crane, and people that ventured far from home and undertaken a hazardous journey are likewise called kunj, the northern Indian word for the demoiselle. It is rare that I'm surprised once on a trip, and here it was twice, but wonderful surprises. On the way to our next hotel, we have decided to make a quick stop at another Gujarat craftsman. Weaving of textiles is another of the beautiful crafts of this area. It is all done by hand in looms that have literally been passed down from generation to generation. The technique has not changed in over 100 years, yet in some cases, the patterns have evolved to accommodate modern tastes, though the traditional designs are still available. Do you remember the kids' game, Pop Goes the Weasel? That's from weaving. It refers to the machine that would wind the yarn called a weasel. After 1,000 yards, the machine would pop, hence, the Pop Goes the Weasel. It has been another long day, but I am of the mindset that while you're on the road seeing and experiencing new things, you should use every minute you can. So it is late when we arrive at our new lodge, Infinity. Infinity Lodge are single tented cabins on permanent floor slabs. They have all the amenities of a 4- or 5-star room, but they're under canvas. The camp has a restaurant and a lovely pool, and is a great respite after a dusty day watching cranes.
Well, we've just arrived here at the Little Rann of Kutch camp, and my first order of business, of course, is to get a bite to eat. Now, while I do that, why don't you go over and have a look at some of the tents where luxury is a tented camp.
Before heading to the airport in Bhuj, we had time to take in 2 more visits of local culture. The first is an ancient monastery called Vishva. The buildings have seen better days, but in some ways that's why it is so charming and interesting to me. There is certainly no shortage of old buildings in India, but this place has the feel of the early people that built it. Despite the fact that there has been no restoration of the buildings or paintings, it is in remarkably good shape for being 400 years old. The wall paintings reflect Hindu epics and what people saw around them. Nature and the natural world played a central role in their lives and their art. This monastery is not in any tourist book or regular sightseeing route. We were the only ones there that day, other than the priests, which made it all the more special. Ask your local guides about out-of-the-way places, and you'll discover some of life's great hidden treasures. Our guide had one last surprise for me, and it was definitely for me. I had asked him if there were any interesting fossil discoveries in the area. The geologic history of a succession of seas and deserts are ideal for fossil formation. He never really answered my question, so I assumed either no, or no one in the area took an interest in the prehistoric animals and plants found in rocks. I was wrong. One man, Mohasingh Sadha, had created an incredible collection of fossils of Gujarat. He had shelves and shelves of ancient mollusks, ancestral crustaceans, plants and mammals. His collection is immense. Though he is not a scientist, he has attempted to identify the early creatures of the Thar Desert and educate the local children on their very ancient past. His collection has begun to spark an interest in the scientific community, and I would not be surprised to see university researchers out here in the near future.
Countless water birds, endangered mammals, 4,000 steps to the top of Palatana. Gujarat is certainly a varied state. Let's take a look at some of the highlights.
Gujarat has so many treasures that one visit doesn't seem like enough. The Wild Ass Sanctuary is a must-see with its rare equines, and it's especially a treat during the migration of the cranes. The local craftsmen will dazzle you with their textile arts, from rogan to block art to weaving. They are famous throughout India for their beauty and variety of their work. Ask your guide to introduce you to out-of-the-way temples or museums that can shed a special light on the culture, traditions, and natural history of the area. And of course, there's Velavadar, the Blackbuck sanctuary where arguably the most beautiful antelope in the world live.
I'm Bill Ball, and I'll see you on the next episode of Journeys in India.